have Bomb Warrior. He does, however, have Pain Warrior and Soul Demon Hunter, which are both classes that, while may not rely on their weapons to win games, do use them to great effect in a lot of matchups. I actually talked to both lnguagehackr and Monsanto, and they both think that they're favored in this matchup. In this matchup as a whole, which is very interesting. Monsanto actually gave himself a much higher favorite than lnguagehackr gave himself. lnguagehackr said he was like 55 to 60. Monsanto gave a resounding 65%, saying it would be pretty easy for him to sweep the Druid with any of his decks if it came to that. So, a very interesting little tidbit before we get into this.
Yep, very much so. Both players feel like they're favored in this matchup when we talk to them, but they both can't be right. One of them will be in the advantage over the other, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that just because one player wins that it confirms 100% what they're talking about. It just means that for today, they get to have the final laugh for their series. Each player will play each other one time in this round robin, and this is the one opportunity here for Monsanto to get a 3-4 record and perhaps put himself in contention to avoid that relegation bracket. Full mulligan out of the Rogue. Monsanto looking for a lot better proactive plays. lnguagehackr playing a control Galakrond Warlock that we haven't really seen much in this expansion, largely because the Galakrond Warlock is really good at a lot of different defensive strategies, but also tends to sometimes just die if your opponent has a lot of direct damage. And right now, in the metagame, there's a lot of different ways you can punish that kind of style of Warlock for taking a little bit too much time to get set up, for dealing a little bit too much damage to themselves. But if you're trying to specifically target strategies that don't have a lot of direct damage from the hand or don't even on-ramp very quickly, right? If you see a lot of decks take a long time, it does seem like Warlock does have some game against these decks. Some of our practice matches, TJ and I were practicing and playing some games, and it felt like the Warlock surprisingly had some even good tempo tools still, because you can just use cards like Nether Breath to play it proactively and leverage your board. And so I think, while those are lessons we've learned a long time ago, it's interesting to see that even the slower decks are able to take the board early. But lnguagehackr is going to be drawing a lot of cards here and trying to be defensive. And just keep drawing a ton of cards while he gets his Galakrond stuff. I don't anticipate the weapon removal to be too impactful in this matchup here. So right now, lnguagehackr has a couple of Bloodfin Raptors in his opening hand.
Yeah, I'm back, Dan. Thank you.
Okay, great. I was told that TJ, you had to dip out for half a second there, but I'm glad you're back.
Yeah. So I liked your explanation of the matchup. One of the things that I will also point out, kind of continuing what I was saying earlier about talking to the players beforehand, is lnguagehackr assumed that Rogue would get a win in the series, but Monsanto said he didn't know because he hadn't actually practiced Rogue against any of the decks. He also just kind of, assumed that Rogue would pretty likely take wins, and decided that there's not really need to practice it. It's more useful to practice the matchups that are going to be tougher. So we shall see. The decks have a lot of control tools, but Rogue should be able to theoretically get there with value. So, but I think this is kind of the mystery matchup for me, whereas I understood, Monsanto's reasoning and, his Paint Warrior, Soul Demon Hunter matchups and how they're good against Druid. I do think that Rogue could be like kind of this weird struggle point where if they don't draw their tools in the right sequence, potentially, they could get gassed out by the sheer amount of removal / tempo that, especially a deck you mentioned that Warlock can have, where they can actually tempo you out of the game and develop big threats themselves, which can be problematic for any deck to deal with.
Oh yeah, very much so. The lnguagehackr immediately trying to deal with this, sees the dirty tricks, sees the cards being drawn from Rogue. Pretty standard stuff early game. Not a lot of threat coming out of Rogue to start things off here. I'm wondering how Monsanto wants to capitalize on this. He does have the ability to extend onto the board, but it's not super significant, right? He's got Underbelly Fence is his best tempo option, but then he floats 2 mana. If he wants to use this opportunity to accumulate more resources through the Evil Miscreant or the Wand Thief, it's very weak on the board. And ultimately, as you go into turn 5 with Jandis Barov, I kind of forgot that Crazed Netherwing was a thing in the when you play up against his deck, and so Jandis Barov gets wiped by that card very easily.
Yeah.
It's sometimes it's a really tough situation against Warlock because you just realize they have so much good situational removal that sometimes is the silver bullet to destroy all of your tempo.
Yeah, it can sometimes get pretty rough. A lot of ways that you can beat Warlock is early pressure and then direct damage. But Secret Rogue has largely cut all of their direct damage. Not many players play Eviscerate anymore. While you can find direct damage from Wand Thief, it's not super reliable to have to go for that for a consistent win condition. So that's why I'm a little bit worried. And Checker now Shield Galakron, absorb a lot of this damage. He's not under any pressure, so you can feel free to just keep playing these minions on curve and not worry too much. The big threat, not the big threat, but kind of the big downside of playing Galakron Warlock the way he's built it against this rogue is that, Cartoot Defender, Cobalt Sticky Finger, Acidic Swamp Ooze, those, like you said, couple of Bloodfin Raptors. And I don't even know what to equate the Cobalt Sticky Finger to, but it's whatever it is, it's not a good card. I don't think there's been a vanilla 4/4. Has there been a vanilla 4/4 ever printed? I don't think so. Because even in the original
there's
set,
been 4/4s that people try to silence or play for tempo for 2 to 3 mana. But yeah, I don't think it's been very commonplace. Either way, Monsanto setting himself up for a resilient board against things like a second copy of Dark Skies or against Crazed Netherwing. And, Language Hacker is pretty much going to just play the slow game until he can find a way to turn things around. For people who are not necessarily familiar with this deck, and, let's say they took a little break from Hearthstone and they came back with the recent expansions, this kind of style of Warlock is going to take some beating, but they will heal a ton of life and then utilize Highlander cards to help turn the tides of the fight or even just cement their win. Because cards like Galakron will summon a big board of demons, or let's say you have the dragon package and you get a lot of damage in. You can even use Zephyrs to close out the game from that point on, or Crux. So we'll see how much momentum Monsanto can get, because part of what makes the Warlock life difficult is that sometimes they do struggle to do meaningful development and board clear because of cards like Plague of Flames that ends up killing their own board. And so, constantly pressuring and picking apart the board like the way Monsanto's going about, this Blackjack Stunner onto the Cartoon Defender is going to make Language Hacker's life miserable, and Monsanto thinking about going for a full board to maximize his pressure. I like this. This is a lot. Language Hacker has to deal with this immediately, but it doesn't have convenient access to AoE, and it does feel like we're still a ways away from Zephyrs being activated.
Oh, Crazed Netherwing isn't even active. I was going to say, Monsanto's been given a lot of, clues that Crazed Netherwing just isn't there. And, now that Language Hacker has drawn Crazed Netherwing, it's not active. So there's no real way for Plague of Flames to touch this board. And, yeah, I think that's definitely lethal with Blackjack Center, Cold Blood plus Fireball.
Yeah.
So, I guess both Language Hacker's assessment was right, and Monsanto's to a degree, where Rogue was just pretty much guaranteed to take a win in the series, even despite not really testing it that much. And the series will come down to whether or not Monsanto can get wins through with his Pain Warrior, more specifically, but also even Demon Hunter, I think, has some chances to struggle. So, pretty expected victory in game number 1 for our hatted friend, Monsanto.
That's right. His head is well protected from any intruding sunlight rays, that is for sure. So Monsanto gets the first win. We kind of expect Rogue to do better this weekend, just given the skyrocket popularity of Priest in general. Secret Rogue does tend to be able to go the distance against the Priest and collect value, and Data-wise, they are slightly favored in that regard, but it is interesting to see, what this rogue can do against weird lineups like this. But if you kind of like focus on the big picture, which is Language Hacker is not really too upset about losing to Rogue here. He'd much rather concentrate onto the Warrior and just shut that down immediately, and then use his adjacent removal or his removal against adjacent classes that are related to Warrior, like Demon Hunter, which may help. I personally think that this Fatigue Druid is actually pretty solid against the Demon Hunter if they don't have the Consume Magics going on, because they just run out of damage, and Demon Hunter often uses their face to trade, and it's really tricky if you only have 1 or 2 taunts, and they have to Blade Dance 1 or 2 minions, and you just keep reviving the Lucent Bark. But at the same time, we've also seen Demon Hunter just have unstoppable hands, and if you do catch wind of the kind of deck you're playing against, Demon Hunter can tailor their strategy in a lot of matchups to get the exact kind of damage they need. But we're not going to actually see that just yet. It looks like Monsanto's going to turn to his Warrior, and that's going to be going up against the Quest Fatigue Druid from Language Hacker.
Yeah, and this is the deck that Monsanto said was kind of the key, not his deck in the Pain Warrior, but the Fatigue Quest Druid from Language Hacker. Monsanto felt confident that he, even if he was down 2-0, that he could sweep the Quest Druid because it did have some glaring weaknesses. And we kind of noticed that too in testing, even though it was very difficult for me to win games with Pain Warrior against the Druid. I could see openings, and I was kind of learning and getting better as I went from playing the Pain Warrior. So if you can get off to an early tempo start, which Monsanto seems very keen on doing with both Inner and Bloodsworn Mercenary, you can get out ahead of the Quest Druid, who has a very slow early game, and maybe dodge some removal, stick enough damage to where there's no time to play Lucent Bark and heals, and it will come down to whether or not they can stick. But I am worried, because if Language Hacker does win this game, it kind of ruins Monsanto's strategy overall of being able to target it. And Priest and the Warlock, I'm much more worried. So we'll see, though. Even though Monsanto's mulligan does not pay off yet, there's still plenty of time for him to find these tools before Language Hacker truly gets online.
Yeah, Language Hacker will be passing early on, as the untapped potential will require him to spend 4 turns without spending his mana, or rather having unspent mana crystals, which is, due to finish on 5 because he did spend, on 4 because he did spend that coin. And on 5, he will be able to play his Oasis Surger and be able to climb back onto the board very quickly. The issue would be that if Monsanto was able to add in damage during that time period, but based off the current opening hands here, Monsanto does not have too much going on here on 3. He's going to draw his card instead. Maybe get a couple of swings off the live wire lance and hope that Language Hacker does not have weapon removal. But Language Hacker very much does with the 6 Swampoos and the Cobalt Sticky Finger.
I was curious if it was worth going Inner Bloodsworn Mercenary there. Yeah. Oh, now we're doing it. All right, there we go. Shield of Honor picked up. I don't care if that's a 1-2. It is now a massive minion, a 6-1 with Divine Shield. We didn't have Language Hacker's camera last week. Honestly, I missed the Language Clapper. We didn't even get to see him clap at his opponent's fantastic plays last week. But this week, Language Hacker feeling very generous and saying, "Good job, Monsanto. You spotted a great play. You're a great player. Great job."
Yeah, a lot of respect shown for a fellow Canadian.
Yep.
Monsanto, of course, thinking about how awesome he is, how great of a Hearthstone Grandmasters he's been able to achieve. Crazy good results. But past season, it seems like Monsanto's kind of been there in the middle of the pack. Obviously been at Division A, but struggling a little bit to close it out. And it's been tough, right? You only have 7 games to be able to do so. But it does seem like this kind of damage is going to be hard to stop. Whenever we played some of these Warrior matchups, they do really depend on that Warrior getting off to a quick start. And now we're at that point where Monsanto is going to be able to push in for a lot of damage here. And even though Language Hacker will clear the board through things like Starfall, he's taking a ton of damage. This is 15.
Yep. And now he has to make since there's a weapon, he has to make the decision, well, you know, I need to remove this board, but I also want to get rid of this weapon. Obviously the board is more important here, but now he has to Starfall here fully, go off the board. He's effectively at 2 because of the weapon swing. A Corcoran Elite, a Risky Skipper, Bomb Wrangler plus Minion, a Kobold Lackey, all of these things lethal. Now Monsanto doesn't have any of these, but because how far Language Hacker's behind here, he doesn't have the opportunity to say, like, go for weapon removal and heal in the same turn, or remove the board and heal in the same turn. So I think Monsanto's game plan would be, you know, present a multifaceted threat here by going as wide as he can on board, while also threatening, obviously, that weapon damage. I guess the biggest question here is, what's the last minion that you play? Warmaw Challenger is the stickiest, most likely to stay around for a turn to be able to potentially buff up. But Bomb Wrangler is annoying to deal with and presents this kind of challenge to Language Hacker, where you have to, you know, get rid of this board while also kind of dismantling these bombs. So I'm curious. There's also the third secret option, which is the Sky General, but the taunt, I don't think the taunt really affects much. I think if you're worried about, like, more health being on the board. I didn't expect this. This is just more power, but this is also weaker to, say, like second Starfall, for instance. But I guess if second Starfall does come out outside of Crystal Power, he wins the game anyway.
Well, Language Hacker can heal through the Healing Touch, killing off this Horde Pillager and bouncing back up to 10 life. 5 on the board through Minion, 7 through the weapon. Still a draw to win for Monsanto. Does not find a way to activate his Bomb Wranglers, but he's going to still look for potential Lackey. And what a world. With all of this damage coming in from Monsanto, still not able to close it out, but Language Hacker still hasn't been able to even use his weapon removal because of how much pressure is coming his way.
Yeah. You got full value out of a Corsair Cash Livewire Lance, which, you know, this deck has 4 sources of weapon removal, not something you expect. But that's the game plan for Monsanto, you know? And, you know, you may look at this and be like, why would Language Hacker do this if he's just going to lose these matchups anyway? Pain Warrior was not the thing that Language Hacker was targeting. It's Bomb Warrior, which is so much more all-in on weapons. They don't have the ability to pressure like Monsanto did earlier here. So, much better off for Monsanto with Pain Warrior than he would have been with Bomb Warrior. But looks like he's just going to develop as much power as he can on board, like the Bomb Wrangler here. Hold on to the Kobold Lackey for potential lethal. He also has Grom in hand, so he's got so much damage from hand. Language Hacker doesn't even have enough mana to play like an Iron Bark and heal, or, you know, try and set up that recurring ability to heal. I just don't think he really has an out at all. Nourish could draw him cards, but it would only bring him up to 3 additional mana crystals, so he would have to find, like, crystal powers? Wow. Okay.
And that's it. Language Hacker concedes. This strategy was supposed to try to narrow down that warrior. And Monsanto able to get a quick Game 2 victory. 2 quick ones to start things off here, TJ.
Yeah.
As Monsanto really been able to thwart off that early game anti-warrior strategy. Language Hacker's not out yet. He still could feasibly beat this Demon Hunter 3 times, but I do think that Demon Hunter is one of those problematic decks that you can try to see if you can counter it, and sometimes it just has too much damage, and that makes me worried about classes like the Druid and Warlock, which sometimes take a little bit of time setting up.
Yeah, the biggest thing for the Druid is, or for the Soul Demon Hunter is, even if it loses 2 games to Priest and Warlock and it comes down to the Druid, I do feel like the Demon Hunter should be heavily favored against Druid because of the fact that they can't stick a board. It can push past a lot of these big minions that they play. There's nothing really in the deck to silence, so you can just save the Consume Magic for the Lucent Bark, and then that recurring, threat of a 4/8 taunt coming out every single time they heal is non-existent. This deck can actually push through so much damage, even through an absurd amount of healing. And that's kind of what I'm worried about for Language Hacker in this matchup. He is going to queue up the Druid first, and does have acidic swamp boost. And we mentioned earlier that even though weapons aren't, 100% crucial to the win condition of the Demon Hunter, they're still helpful, and that's a lot of damage that you're essentially giving up with all that weapon removal. You're theoretically should never stick a weapon, if you're thinking about it in that regard, with 4 weapons being in the deck and 4 weapon removal being in the deck for Language Hacker.
Well, turn 1. Off to a good start for Monsanto. He has the 1-drop on 1. He could 2-drop on 2. And I guess Monsanto has to weigh the value of you keeping the coin versus using it to trade it for a card. I don't mind using the coin to help draw an extra card, but at the same time, it does mess up your curve. You also could just simply use the Chaos Strike here, coin out at 4-drop and try to play along the curve there, and then play Mana Feeder Panthera when it fits the mana a little bit better. But having that recursive 2 damage every single turn does add up. So Monsanto ends up going for the Chaos Strike instead. And I think this could be the nod that Monsanto is respecting that Druid does have a lot of ways to rebound into this game. And wow, what a pickup for Language Hacker. Finding a 5-mana spell so that this Steel Beal is able to get that 5 armor. That could be huge.
Any little bit of health gain, right? It's about trying to efficiently gain health over the course of the game, because you can't rely on these big taunts to get through, because that's Demon Hunter's specialty, is pushing through these big minions. But it's hard for them to push through big minions while at the same time dealing enough damage to the face to outlast healing. So there's the Horde Pillager kind of coming up clutch here. We got some more claps.
All right.
I live for those, Dan.
That's right. They're shot into the arm, TJ. Refreshing. Wrath to draw a card here looks pretty good here for Language Hacker. I do think he might be concerned about how much damage he ends up taking before he's able to finish this quest, but it seems like the aggression from Monsanto isn't super significant. What I worry about is the follow-up if his opponent starts to put out the Soul Shard Lapidaries and the Gladebound Adepts. But he will be able to finish the quest this turn, so everything should be okay.
Yeah. Just right now, one of the problems that I kind of realized with the deck is that sometimes it can run out of gas, right? You have all these healing, but if you're just using a healing touch without like a reset bar, it's a pretty weak turn. But you make up for that with the fact that all of your cards are just so individually powerful, because you get essentially double the cards effect. And you're not too worried about it. But Monsanto going wide here with some some minion pressure, also has the weapon pressure over the top. Drawing cards as well, which is the dual threat of the Mana Feeder Panthera. I think this is both players probably pretty happy with where they are at the moment. Ooh, the Shard Shatter Mystic. Ooh, the Shard Shatter Mystic.
Well, clap come out
so
here.
Good. Here it is.
You don't break the wall.
I mean, I think Language Hacker anticipated to be cleared off, but yeah, the Shard Shatter Mystic is one of the best ways to go about it. And Monsanto has the board once more. Language Hacker finds some awkward cards. Like Wrath here doesn't exactly fill his mana the way he wants to. If he plays Coldwall Sticky Finger, he's once again going to miss another weapon. That's not really a good spot for Language Hacker to be dropping these cards. He could reasonably just Starfall, play it even more defensive, and just wipe this board, but I guess maybe a bigger thing to be concerned is how does he deal with things like the Sociologist Militia?
Yeah, I think that's like the big problem. Now, with the Shard Shatter Mystic haven't been played, there are only 3 soul fragments, but even just a 5/5 with 3 3/3s is still quite threatening. And let's say you leave this up and Sociologist Militia doesn't come out, like, then what? You're just taking that 7 damage for nothing. Oh yeah, that's a big one.
Language Hacker's so great to he's so supportive of his friend, It's great.
Yeah.
Really cheers for everybody.
So patriotic
Himself
as
and
well,
his opponent.
cheering for everybody, all the Canadian players.
Oh yeah.
Just very proud of other Hearthstone players from his home country. Yeah, you love to see it.
Very much so. Because you know what, TJ? We're all winners.
Yeah. At the end of the day,
No! One card
Raw.
off from the Keeper Steladris to be able to get both copies of the Wrath. Keeper Steladris, pretty people don't remember. Gives you both copies of that spell. Language Hacker frustratedly takes out his ear pods, or whatever he was listening to, trying to think about what's the best way to bail himself out of this situation.
I don't know if there's a good
going
way to do that.
Just thinking about it. He needed precisely those 2 cards, TJ. There's no way my deck could be a deck like that.
Yeah, now he's got Draki Warblades, Bladebound Adept. Monsanto said that this matchup was... let me look at the exact wording that he used.
I really hope that he uses
Super favored.
Okay.
He didn't. I thought he used more flavorful language than that, but I guess
Right.
I'll
I thought
accept
he used the other F word. Free.
Super favored is just
Wow.
pretty boring, but whatever.
Well,
You can see
I mean,
why he's saying that it's super favored, because Druid just struggles to keep up. All right, well, it's time for Worm Rust Purifier. Say goodbye to your weapon removal. I mean, he's got most of it in his deck already. The only cards that he's changing now are the second Cobalt Sticky Finger and Archivist Elysiana. That's it.
and this Blade Dance with the Marrow Slicer one more time. Clearing the board, pressuring.
Well done, Monsanto.
One more for the fans. And Language Hacker is done. Concede. That's going to do it 3-0. A really cool lineup from Language Hacker, but Monsanto's steady play and fortunate draws, and honestly, on his understanding of how to play certain positions, gets rewarded, right? Like, that happens. Maybe if they play that series 10 times, Language Hacker can win 6, 7, maybe even 8 of them. But, sometimes even if you bring that target strategy, it might not work out. And we've actually seen this, several times throughout Hearthstone's history with Conquest. One of the most famous examples was, I believe, the 2016 Last Call Invitational, where Frozen, another Grandmaster, chose to bring a target warrior strategy and decided to go super all in on trying to beat it by playing like these really crazy like double mind control priest lists. It was super interesting to watch, but he lost. And even though he was very favored in a lot of matchups, you totally still can have those failure rates that are built into the deck end up biting you. So Monsanto gets a really important win. He improves from 2-4 to 3-4, and Language Hacker falls to 3-3. Language Hacker still can make the playoffs if he ends his round robin season at 4-3, but it is going to be a little